when the foot hits the ground, a whole body reaction occurs. So what does that mean? So welcome to Finding Your Reign podcast with me, Jeannie, a movement therapist who specialises in hypermobility, EDS and chronic pain. And I'm delighted today to welcome our guest, Gary Ward. So I'm just going to read his bio because there's a lot to say about Gary, so I don't want to miss anything out. So Gary Ward is an author, educator and speaker on the subject of human movement and anatomy. In the UK, he has appeared on the TV show Doctor in the House. His passion for the foot hugely influenced his interpretation of human movement. He teaches an evolution of anatomy and physiology, and an evolution that starts with the foot and results in whole body integrated movement. He is the inventor of the flow motion model, a simple description of what the body does and when it does it. And this is a powerful tool for both assessment and intervention of the human body in the quest for health through movement. Gary is also the author of What the Foot, and he teaches his work all over the world. So I met Gary back in 2014 when I attended one of his 6-day immersion courses for therapists and medical professionals called Anatomy in Motion. His teachings on foot mechanics and the implications of how the foot really works were a game changer for me. The course quite simply changed how I look at how the body moves. As most of you know, my background is in Pilates training, and the foot wasn't really included in any of that training material in any great detail. And yet I would see things with my clients and I'd be confused and wondering why these things were happening through the foot and having implications further up the body. So Gary's work pretty much was that missing link to my other knowledge. And I still use his work today. It's a constant resource for me and with my hypermobile clients. So thank you, Gary, for all your contributions to the world of movement. And as our listeners will have gathered, we're going to be focusing on the foot today, which is your speciality. So just to introduce yourself, how do you know so much about the feet? What's your background?
How do I know so much about the feet? Well, firstly, thank you for a lovely opening, and thanks for having me. And
you're welcome.
What an interesting question to open with. So, well, how do I know so much about the foot? I think, firstly, I'm known for not necessarily being professionally trained, in inverted commas, as it were. So I grew up. Not grew up. I was old by the time I ended up in the ski resorts, but I felt like my real growing up took place when I was introduced to the foot for the purpose of fitting it into a ski boot. And we literally did 3 days of studying. So going from not knowing what the bone, not even knowing that there were bones in the foot, to these are bones in the foot and there's 26 of them and there's 33 joints and these are their names. And I was a linguist, am a linguist. So the idea of picking up and remembering the names was very easy. And learning we looked at the foot with the view to being able to make it neutral. So the whole education was around neutralizing the foot, which is fairly common for anybody. So neutral anatomy, to explain, is the body's most aligned position. So it's neither, if you're thinking of the spine, it's where you're neither bending left or right or flexing forward or extending backwards. It's that position of absolute middle. And so we were basically looking to create sell, I suppose, a ski boot that would fit everybody's foot. And so you learn to look at the shape of the foot, because you need to match it to the last of the boot. So there were thin boots, there were wide boots, with a narrow heel, there were high arch instep boots, there were low ones. And so you just learn to pigeonhole the foot, and that's that boot. And people would say, can I have the pink one? You'd be like, no, it's never going to work for you. You're going to have a really horrible brown one, but it'll be comfortable, I promise. And so that was the kind of the visual side of it. We learned to look at the foot. And then we would be able to see the foot shape that they adopt. So a flat foot will have you pushing your little toes more into the outer edge of the boot. The medial ankle will push onto the inside of the boot, and the instep would change position. And so you're able to say to people, look, if you put this boot on, you're going to feel it here, here, and here. But when we neutralize the foot, put the foot in its middle position, all of those pressure points will come away. The toe will come back from the end of the boot. You'll have wiggle room, and you'll be able to be free. And of course, a neutral foot has the opportunity to put skis flat on the snow. Whereas if you're skiing in a flat foot, you're going to put the skis on the inner edges, and the skis are always trying to turn towards each other. And then, so you could even then build the orthotic nice and tough and strong, so that the foot was, you know, on the outer edge, so it's a bit more dynamic or athletic. So you could play around with it as you wanted. But of course, in order to take a foot from flat to a neutral position, you had to be able to observe its movement. And I just mentioned the orthotics. We used to build these orthotics. Stand on the silicon beads, lift the toes up, help the foot into a neutral position, get the talus into the right position. That's the bone between the shin and the foot. And then kind of make the mold, and then put the material in to get the footbed out, and you have this lovely shape, and you'd grind it to make it fit and put it in the boot, and everybody would be super happy. And so we spent a long time looking at these, looking at feet. We would do, I don't know, 10 to 12 fits a day, probably 5 to 6 days a week.
Gosh, that's a lot.
And I was out there for seven years. So in that process, I became obsessed with anatomy. So I grew up doing a lot of drawing. I used to draw footballers and always drawing the body, and so I always had something in me that wanted unlocking, and this unlocked it. So then I did my personal training qualification, sports therapy, massage qualifications, in order to give me access to work, find out more about these bodies. And I've said on other podcasts before that it was a bit disappointing, because I never really felt like I learned any more than I already knew from reading weightlifting magazines when I was 16 years old. So I already had quite a lot of the knowledge. Sailed through the course. I think I got one question wrong in all the exams, and it was just easy. It had always just been easy. So to then realize that the world was making it oh so complicated felt like a mission for me to try and make it easy again. But in what context? And I was really, the movement that I was seeing in feet, the movement that we were able to create in feet, led to this curiosity about when I take that foot from a flat position to a neutral position, I've changed the position of the shin, which has given more movement in the knee, which allows movement in the pelvis. And eventually, over time, starting to piece that together is what led to what you just called the flow motion model, which is basically an observation of every bone and joint's journey through a single footstep, or through a stride from heel strike to heel strike. And the process of kind of going through that really blew my mind, because it really exposed huge differences from what we were being taught, or what everyone was being taught, and what you were reading in the mainstream was very different to the things that I was noticing happen naturally in the body. So things that happen naturally in the body, in order to be able to walk with fluid efficiency, were things that in our industry we were trying to stop happening. Foot pronation being one of them, core mobility, I guess, being one of them. Like at the time in the early noughties, 2000s, was, you know, it was all about stabilizing your core. And here's me going, Jesus, if we stabilize our core, we can't actually walk. So absolutely. And so what we were training, why we were training, recognizing that people stand in awkward postures, that we're then training them to stabilize these postures rather than adjust the posture so they can be more stable. And I just saw all these little flips that needed talking about. So I started talking about them, and here we are today.
Oh, that's I'm just so excited to delve a bit deeper into what some of the things you just said, especially about the core stability and this people being told basically that pronation is a bad thing. But before we go into that, I mean, in your book, What the Foot, which I've read, lots and lots of times. You say
It's still a good title, isn't it?
It's a brilliant title. And I actually quote this in my second book, Hypermobility Without Tears. I quote you in the book because you say, and you just touched on it a little bit, that when the foot hits the ground, a whole body reaction occurs. So what does that mean to us when we're walking? What do you mean by that?
It means very simply that, well, when the way that our foot interacts with the ground influences the whole structure. So if I enter optimally, let's say, into the ground, I give optimal opportunity for the body to thrive through the movement. So it really starts with how you put your heel on the ground. If you put your heel on the ground in a correct way, which would be with a supinated foot. A supinated foot is a kind of high arched foot shape, and on the outer and back corner of the heel, you give yourself more chance of creating the optimal footstep. Whereas most people will actually hit the heel late, so they hit further along the foot, which also means that they hit more inside the foot, and they're already veering towards a pronated space. The more pronated, flatter the foot is when you hit the ground, the more you're going to collapse into what they call an overpronation. And therefore the timing of your ability to rescue that and get back to a normal stride is compromised. Now, if you are a more flat-footed type, and to be clear, if you are more flat-footed or pronated, or if you are more high-arched and rigid, it still means that your foot does not have the capacity to experience its full movement potential. So if I land on the inside of my foot and stay on the inside of my foot, then I'm going to do things like bring the knee in, close the gap at the groin, change the influence as a rotational influence. So a pronated foot will always turn a pelvis away from it. And so if one foot is pronated, the other one is pronated, you'll see that the pelvis really has this, it tries to go rotate and it tries to rotate, but ends up becoming very, very still.
Yes.
So the other thing is that if you are landing in a pronated position, you don't have the opportunity to experience the opposite foot shape, which is the high arched one, which is the one that creates the full rotation in the pelvis. So you're just going to limit movement all the way up if the movement is not present in the feet.
Yes.
And so with the ski boots, I was talking about the neutral position.
Yes.
And so neutral is the best place to start from. So if you're able to rest in neutral, for instance, you have the opportunity from that position to roll into a flatter foot shape.
Yeah.
The value of doing that is that the vast majority of the muscles in the foot, if you look critically at the muscle attachments, and forget names like flexors and extensors for the medical people listening, you will notice that the vast majority of these muscles are set up to supinate the foot. That means that when they contract, they will pull your foot into the high arched position. So if you're striking the foot flat, then all of the vast majority of muscles are going to be long and in a lengthened state. And in a lengthened state, it's like holding an elastic band at full stretch over a period of time and then asking it finally a couple of years later to contract. It's not going to be able to. It's going to lose its elasticity. So in a way, we have to try and recreate that. But if you stay on the inside, not only are the muscles long, the joints are then fixed in this position and they're unable to experience their opposite shape, which is the shape of supination, which will then shorten the muscles. So we end up in a world where we then begin to say, well, obviously your muscles they're long and they're tight, so we're going to strengthen them. So strengthen your muscles, that will give you your supinated foot shape. But we know that that's really a really long, very, very long term, if just hopeful roll of the dice for many people. We actually have to teach them to be able to do the pronation so that the muscles have no option but to contract against that pronation to trigger the supination. And all the way up the chain.
So that I was going to come on to this later, but you just mentioned it. So in your book, one of your big 5 rules is that muscles must lengthen before they contract. And so if we're
Yes,
saying
yeah.
that you've got a very flat foot, your muscles are lengthening, you're saying that we have to teach those muscles how to contract again. Is that right?
Yes, by
And
lengthening them more.
By lengthening them more, which is what people
Yeah.
really kind of freak out about, because, you know, they go, I've already got a flat foot and you're asking me to pronate it more to make it come back. But that's exactly what they need to do, right? And that would apply.
It is.
That applies through the whole body as well, doesn't it? Because obviously a lot of our
so
listeners,
I was going to say that if you're watching human movement and you are aware of where these muscles lie in the body, we often say, like, what we get people to do is to Google cats, watch cats jumping, watch cats moving, watch leopards running, and you'll see that what's happening to those tissuey areas is they get really, really long and they contract from a lengthened position. That what we do is we go to the gym and we find ourselves in neutral and shorten our muscles to short. So from neutral to short, not from long back to neutral. It's a subtle difference, but it's absolutely phenomenally huge and impactful when you get to put that into the body. Now, most people can't find that neutral position in their foot. And so to get them to shorten from there is an impossibility. So we have to teach them to lengthen from the long position. Yes. And the only way we can get the muscles in the foot in the long position is to teach the bones how to be in a pronated state. Wow. And so there are 26 of those little chaps that need organizing, and there are 33 joints, each with a 3-dimensional potential that need this influence putting into them. And so we have to educate the foot itself how to flatten. So unfortunately, you're saying to me that, you know, well, I've already got a flat foot, and a flat foot is a really rubbish label, unfortunately. Yes, your arch might be close to the ground. Yes, your arch might be lower, but the chance of it being pronated in my book, now I just caveat this, pronation is a 3-dimensional movement that takes place with the 3 points of contact, the tripod on the ground, and that's your heel, your metatarsal head, and your big metatarsal head, that's your big toe knuckle, and your fifth metatarsal head, that's your little toe knuckle. And if those things aren't on the ground, and you have a flat foot shape, then I wouldn't call it pronated personally. Okay. What would you call it? Well, so the rear foot may have collapsed in order to try and put pronation into the foot, but the forefoot hasn't responded. It's left this what looks like an apparent flat foot shape, but we should be able to just ask ourselves, if I've got pressure in these 3 areas, and if I have, then it might be pronated. If it hasn't, then we've just got this. It's most likely to be what's called an everted foot. Okay. And an everted foot is a single dimension of the 3 available. So we don't want to use one dimension. We want to maximize the benefit of all 3. So if we just take that as an example, if my foot is just everted, so I've got pressure on the inside of the foot, the arch is low, but the pressure on the outside border is lacking. That would best describe an everted foot. I would say, that's quite a lot of what I see in my hypermobile clients, to be and so they roll to the inside, the knees are going to come in a bit, the femurs are going to internally rotate, the pelvis is going to tilt forward. And you can see how that's all coming just from the pressure here on the inside of the foot. I've got a current Instagram series that I'm just running, which is all about your foot pressures. And it's taking the time to stand up, close your eyes, and have a feel for where the pressure is in your feet. And some people will have it inside on both feet, and they will be how I just described. Some people will have it on the inside of one foot and the outside of another foot of the other foot, and then their body weight is a little bit more to the right. And so from these pressures, we can start to gauge the overall body position. But what's really important is that we take time to look at the foot structure itself and begin to re-expose that to what it should be and could be doing. Absolutely. Because if we can start to bring those pressures more evenly, then it's going to bring the knees out, and it's going to take some pressure off that tilted pelvis, maybe relieve some pressure in the low back and give us freedom to move. But actually bringing everything to that center point from which I have a better opportunity to move both left and right, rather than just being stuck at one end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So obviously, and you know, our listeners will have quite widespread pain. You know, they will have knee pain and hip pain. So we're saying a lot of that could be helped along by looking at the foot, basically. Because if everything's rolling in, it could, obviously, without seeing the, everyone's different. But a lot of times we see the knees rolling in, the internally rotated femurs, pelvises that are kind of stuck, definitely anteriorly tilted. And then we get the lordosis, obviously, so very tight in our lower backs. And then typically a very tight thoracic spine as well, I guess. Because
in a flexion.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously shoulders, it just carries on,
let's not be pretend that this is just the EDS hypermobile community, because you've just described perfectly the vast majority of people on the planet, whether they're hypermobile or not. The fact is that again, in the book, there's a American College of Sports Medicine, I think, was the paper, and it says it says there are 70% of abnormal feet and 30% of normal feet, and they were describing that as obviously there are kind of biomechanical norms. If they fit inside bracket A and bracket B, they were normal feet. But I would always say, well, I've never seen really normal. If my very strict bracket is it neutral or not, then I'm going to put it into the abnormal. I don't like normal. If normal is everyone's pronated, that's what's normal, right? We want to create a new normal, which is where they're actually able to move. So, but if one foot is slightly flatter than the other foot, the flatter foot will bend the knee more on that leg. It will rotate the pelvis away from it on that leg. It will create a counter rotation in the spine. So even if 2 feet fit in normal ranges but are different, it's creating a abnormal change in the body. So we dismiss the 30% of normal, because really to fit into a let's not worry about it bracket, they need to both be identical and they both need to be mobile and effective, in my opinion. And that's, you know, I am quite anal, quite OCD, and would like to seek perfection where possible, right? And so that's what we, you know, we got a thing, a fridge magnet that says aim for the moon and you'll land among the stars, you know, that type of idea. So we hope for the best and go after it. But inside the 70% of abnormal, it said 95% will be pronated and 5% will be supinated. I mean, and even years later, having read that and written that, I would still argue that those pronated and supinated can't really be coined and defined as that. There'd still be messy feet that we need to do some work with. But if 95% of us are pronated, 95% of us are going to adopt a position similar to what you just described. And just to remind, feet pressures on the inside, knees to the inside, pelvis tilted forward, lordosis curve in the lower back, and then we flex forward, head forward, rounded shoulders, living a life in front of us. And so if we're all so similar, the thing here is that we start to generate areas of compression between the joints, where joints get stuffed together, and we start to we'll start to see tension in the tissues where joints are pulled apart. So for instance, trying to keep that nice and simple, where you've mentioned the tilt in the pelvis and the lordosis in the curve in the back. So the joints on the back of the spine will be compressing together. Joints on the front of the spine will be open. So abdominal tissue will be long, but all that area on the back will be short and gnarly. And obviously that's where people can have discomfort. But I always point out that we can have discomfort where the structure is compressed, but we can also have discomfort where the structure is under tension, and there's no telling who will have what at what point. So if we start to understand the shape that people are making in their skeleton, we can, and then people can draw an X on the parts of their body that are sore, you'd be able to say, well, you've simply got a compression discomfort here, or you've simply got a tension-based discomfort here. Now, if we can change those feet from this to this, from on the inside to more neutral, and bring the knees out and soften the pelvis, you're going to change the amount of compression in the spine. You're going to change the amount of tension in the tissue. That's everywhere, not just in the spine. And that's how then the feeling of discomfort is reduced by virtue of changing the shape of the structure. Yeah. And so you mentioned muscles lengthen before they contract. The other rule that is a big one for us is joints act and muscles react.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Work. Yeah, sorry, I'm just...
No, it's perfect. No,
it fits nicely into the conversation. A lot of people will be given things to do for their muscles. Yes. Whether it's to strengthen them, whether it's to stretch them, whether it's to foam roll them, whether it's to, massage. The amount of people using lacrosse balls on their feet and stuff like that, it makes me cringe. We really need to be influencing the bony shape. If we can change the bony shape, we instantly tap into the muscle length, because if the bones change, the muscle has to. But you can tighten a muscle, you can strengthen a muscle, shorten a muscle, stimulate a muscle. It's weird. It doesn't seem to have the power to make the bone move. And when I'm talking about I'm starting to hear people kind of go, what? Because that's what we're growing up with. But when you move a bone, two bones to influence a joint, you move a group of bones, let's say in the feet, then you instantly have an impact on that talus bone, which instantly is going to rotate the shin, which is instantly going to create a change of shape in the knee, which allows it to extend a bit, which means that you've got more freedom of movement at the pelvis. Yes. If you're just rolling a lacrosse ball on a foot tissue, you're not necessarily going to influence that chain of events. And I think that's what's important here, is that if we're going to work with the bones, we won't need to work with all of them at once, which sounds like a big deal. Mm-hmm. But the cool part of it is that they just create human shapes that we then use as an influence to start restoring the joint-based movement for people, so that we can take the pressure off the muscles, and of course the pressure off the joints, so that compression-tension relationship adjusts. Yes. And it downgrades a little bit. I've seen, you will have seen, actually it's still in the book, is a little case study of a guy who had 54% of his body weight in his right heel, and was in absolute agony. Do you remember? And I had all of you in the room stand up. Let's put your foot pressures where his foot pressures are. And then I say, where do you feel your pain? And everyone says, oh, back, right hip, lower back. And the odd outlier feels something different. Yeah. The vast majority say exactly what his symptoms were. Yes. So if everybody can walk in his shoes, they would all have his pain. Yes. So the journey was to redistribute his foot pressures so that he could get more weight into his left forefoot. Yeah. After one session, he's miraculously pain-free, but his structure is still messy. His structure had gone from 54% in his heel to 34% in his heel, but you looked at it and it was still not great. Yeah. But it's 20% reduction of pressure, which means if you put your weight in your back right heel with very little in your left forefoot, you'll all lean back into that corner. Yeah. And so as he leant less back into that corner, still back into that corner, the same amount of feeling that he had reduced to the point of going, it doesn't hurt anymore. Yeah. You're a miracle man. No, not really. We just put pressure where you didn't have it before. Yeah. Yeah. And so we taught you to get into your left foot. We taught you to take your pelvis over to the left instead of leaving it on the right. Did exactly the same with the man on the TV. 34 years of pain with Ray. He was virtually a very similar foot position. Different story, different background, different reasoning. But we just taught his skeleton to go places where it had never been before. And that was enough to do it. Yeah. Now neither of those guys were hypermobile. So no. Yeah, but I do that all the time. So I always take your technique, and we do that. I get my clients to stand and say, where do you feel the weight? And then I mimic it and I put it in my body. So I stand up because I just want to feel it, because I need to experience it before I can help them and understand what's going on. And you're absolutely right, because as soon as I do it, I go, oh yeah, well, I can feel where your pain is because I'm feeling it already. Yeah.
And then, like you say, start to get them having a new experience. Oh, actually, I don't have to put all my weight on my right foot. I can shift over. They're like, wow. And the great thing is they feel different instantly. You know, okay, it doesn't fix everything, but they go, wow, this feels so different. And that's when you know their body's going to be open to it, because they're ready to accept a new experience, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and what's nice about that, Jeannie, is you're going under the radar as well. So they're just, we'll do these movements that will coax you into bearing weight in the other foot. Yeah. And then your brain goes, I actually quite like that. I think that's probably going to help me. And so they're personally not making the choice. I've always joked that people generally don't like change. Yes. And as we're seeing kind of in the world at the moment, but people don't like change. So given the choice of change, they'd stay away from it. But under the radar change, it can prove to be a very long-term thing.
Definitely. Yeah. It's down to the nervous system, isn't it, really? If the nervous system registers a change and says, actually, that feels better than the last position, I'm going to stick with this one. Exactly. Because I often get them
beneficial or not.
Exactly. Because oftentimes if you say to people, just go back to what you were doing before, and they go into it and they're like, oh, that feels awful. And I was like, well, yeah, but that's what you were doing for 20 years. So they just have to have that. It's remarkable. Yeah. Oh, that's really good. So, and again, we probably touched on this, but a lot of our clients, and again, probably not just the hypermobiles, but they have a gait pattern, because a lot of our listeners have been in pain for many, many years. They have fear of movement. So they don't, oftentimes we don't breathe properly because we're very tight in our thoracic. Also, it's a fear-led thing. So when we walk, we don't have a lot of movement anywhere really. So the legs are moving, but we're not getting hip extension. There's no rotation. Now, I know you talk about all these counter rotations that are needed in the body for really fluid, easy movement. So if somebody's walking quite stiff and rigid, what are the implications for that? I mean, long term, that's not great for them.
Are they doing it by choice? As in,
no,
don't move fine, just how they are?
No, it's just how they are, because they're kind of protection. I guess we're in a protection mode. So we don't want to move. We're scared of moving because, you know, it could hurt. We might hurt our shoulder. We might hurt our hips. So we get into a point where everything becomes, like you were saying, very compressed. So we kind of walk in a box. I kind of see it as like a box. Over time, of course, you're not getting those muscles lengthening and contracting, I guess, are you?
Absolutely. So we call them, we call this set of structure the cogs. So the pelvis, excuse me a sec, the pelvis, the rib cage and the skull. And they articulate. If you look at the joint surfaces and watch how one knocks on to affect movement at the other in an ABCD relationship, you recognize that the pelvis and the rib cage always move in opposition to each other.
Okay, so that's a big one.
And that's in all three dimensions. So that means if my pelvis tilts forward, my rib cage should tilt up.
Oh, wow.
If my pelvis rotates left, my rib cage should rotate right. If my pelvis tilts up on the left-hand side, my rib cage should tilt down on the left-hand side. And that's how you have movement in the spine. Now, attached to the spine and the rib cage and to the pelvis is a plethora of muscles. From your muscles, the lats, which reach onto your arms, the quadratus lumborum sits either side of the spine, and attaches down onto the pelvis, the erectors of the spine, the pectoral chest muscles, the rib cage muscles, the breathing muscles, and then from the rib cage you've got all that tissue from your neck reaching up into your skull, from your collarbone, scapula, shoulder blade, all the way up. And so I just mentioned a whole bunch of muscles. And if you're going to exercise all of them, it's going to take you all week. And that's what it does. People lay out their abdominal program, their back program, their chest program, right? Yeah. And it's going to take you all week to do that. But if you can gently introduce this oppositional movement of the pelvis and the rib cage, we have stuff that can help people access this quite nicely. then you're able to tap into all of those muscles very, very, very quickly. Now, you mentioned stiffness in the thoracic, right? So if you stiffness in the thoracic and stiffness in the rib cage, if your head is forward, we've mentioned that if we're holding pressure in flat feet, that the pelvis is tilted forward. The permissions for that pelvis to tilt unforward, i.e. back towards its resting neutral position and beyond, comes from the foot being able to be in its opposite state. And so my foot, if my foot's on the inside and I can't get the pressure to the outside, then, and my pelvis is forward, I'm not going to have a chance to do that. So already I'm going to walk with my feet not changing shape, my knees not changing position. Basically, my leg is going forwards and backwards without any articulation in the joint structures. Then my pelvis has got no choice but to stay tilted. My spine has no choice but to stay extended in the lordosis shape. And then I'd have, because that doesn't move, it has no input into the higher thoracics, and the head just stays forward and nothing moves. And so the simplicity that I like to put in is we'll literally invite you, lay on the floor if standing up is too much, but laying on the floor, you can gently bring your knees up, feet flat on the ground, roll your pelvis down towards your toes and let your body be free, and then roll it all the way back so the lumbars touch the floor. And you'll start to feel the maybe not immediately, and even in person sometimes, not me, but in person with somebody working one-to-one, it takes a little bit of coaxing and a little breathing and a little bit of guidance and a little bit of cueing. Again, that's all that stuff that we can help with. But you start to create that rhythm. And we call them cogs, so that you can have the visual of. Is this going out as a video or just sound?
Video.
Can I do this?
Yes, you can do that.
So the cogs on the clock, they move like this. This is my pelvis tilting in one direction. Then the rib cage on top has to go in the opposite direction, and that creates an extension here in the spine. And then if the rib cage is now going this way, the skull, in order to keep on top of it and the eyes on the horizon, goes the opposite way. So we have this articulation as the ribs rise up and the skull dips, and there's a flow put into your body. So all of a sudden, joints, every vertebrae has got this experience. Instead of being fixed in one, or fixed like this, or fixed like this, it has the opportunity to experience both ends of its range. And now you've got all those muscles lengthening and shortening. You've got the opportunity for more air in and air out. So you can add breathing into this work. You can tap into the respiratory muscles, and you can start to put a flow. So with that flow present, then we've now got all of the muscles have been tapped into. All of the muscles having opportunity to lengthen and contract, inhaling and exhaling. All the respiratory muscles are engaged, the neck muscles are engaged. They're all moving and they're all following the bones. Joints act, muscles react. And the pelvis, if the pelvis now has the freedom to do this, it will simply turn the femurs in and out. And if the femurs can turn out, it can pull the feet out of that midline as well. So not only can we work with the feet to influence the upper body, we can work with the upper body to influence the feet. And the magic is where we tie them all together.
I mean, I think, very much in agreement. It drives me mad when you see things like, this is a class for your legs, or this is a glute class, or this is like you say, an abdominal class. You can't have individual muscle group classes. You can't go to an exercise class just for your abs, because you are going to be affecting everything else. Everything is related to everything else. It's one of my bugbears.
We have lots of bugbears, I think, when you wander this path. But to keep things real, if it depends on your intention. If your intention is a good workout, then I think that's fine. But if I think we've somewhere along the line, in the word movement, we've crossed that idea between getting sweaty and working hard to actually influencing movement at a joint. I tried writing a piece about it and it's very difficult, because you've got movement and it's one word. What is it? Because if you're going to a class and you're moving your body, if you're moving your body at speed, if you're moving your body in order to move a weight or achieve a goal, then you're basically going to move in your fixed patterns. If you want to undo your fixed patterns, your movement has to be really, really slow and really, really specific and really on point. And when I say on point, we're putting up boundaries, limitations, so that you're not overcompensating in one place to get the movement elsewhere. You're actually getting the movement where you want it. And I think it's a huge difference. And so in this community, they might have the idea that exercise makes me well, but exercise doesn't change. If exercise, you want the type of movement that influences your structure to give your muscles more opportunity. You're going to get so much more out of teaching your spine to move in the way we just described than you are, I'm going to say, a Pilates class, because the Pilates class is not necessarily triggering that. I didn't mean to do that as a defamatory to Pilates, but I could have picked any class. But you know, even yoga, we can go and have this huge stretching, meditative, wonderful experience that I love to do. But I haven't necessarily tapped into those lovely little joint sequences that really matter for the flow. And so we used to get weightlifters to break through huge plateaus they'd been stuck in for ages by doing these silly, quiet little movements. That's very against what they would normally do, but they get back under the weight bar and just blow through their plateau because they have more potential in their system. They're not working on old habits anymore, they're working in new spaces. And I think that's what's important. If we take that to pain, you can take the pressure off parts of your body by getting them to move differently in a more coordinated way and in a more succinct way.
Definitely. You know, people often come and see me because they've been referred by their physio or their doctor, and they say they've been told they need to strengthen their core. You know, I want to get strong. Well, I don't believe in that old model of core stability anyway, but I always say to them, we can't, if they're already tight and everything's contracted and they're tense, we can't do any kind of strength work, because you've got to let that go. We've got to give you a new experience and then start again. And the body's going to be so much more receptive than if we just started trying to do strength work on a reformer, or, you know, however we want to do it. It just doesn't work. Because like we said earlier, again, you've got to have a new experience, and your nervous system has got to change to, you know, otherwise I'll just strengthen you how you already are, like you say, with your old habits, your old patterns. It's not really going to do you any good. So we used to
we'd stand people on a force plate where they actually get a visual of how they're holding their weight in their feet. So it would give you a digital readout of the quadrants of the foot. Like I said earlier, that guy 54%, and so we would have weightlifters and personal trainers, and they'd look at it, and all their weight is on the right and all the weight is backwards, and you'd say, would you want to squat on that? Would you let your client squat on that? And they're like, no way. Where would you want to squat from? In a very balanced, organized position. Okay, so let's reorganize things, give you body ability to do that. And then you'll do it in a flowing state, not a compensated, adaptive one. But that's the one that we all live in, and we want to move towards the other one. Yeah,
exactly. No, very interesting. So I know we talked about this before, but I just, because it's so important for our listeners, I just want to go over it one more time so we've got it. So many people come to see me and they're led to believe that pronation is a bad thing and they shouldn't be pronating their feet, and they have orthotics to support the foot and to support them. So that they come to me believing that they shouldn't pronate their feet, like it's a really bad word. But we need pronation, right? Pronation is not a bad thing. Yeah. And that's to allow the muscles to lengthen and contract, as we were saying earlier.
But more than that, I think the chances of these people actually being pronated is very, very slim.
Yes, okay.
They're more likely to have a flat foot because of the organization of the body above it and the adaptation and compensations going on in 33 joints. The chance of them pronating in a pure and simple way that they were designed to is very, very slim. So you don't find optimally flat feet. The flat foot that doesn't have pressure under the first knuckle but has pressure in the toe, where the talus bone is rotated and there's a counter rotation somewhere else in the foot, these will all present themselves as flat, again with no pressure on the outside border. That looks like a flat foot. It's it's really loose terminology.
Yeah.
It's poor quality assessment, and it's low quality advice. Actually, that the people giving them that advice has been given, so it's probably not their fault, but it's coming. Yeah. The whole education of this is affected. Personally, I can feel an onslaught coming from outside. But
that's so that's
what we're doing is we're just propping the foot up, Jeannie, to give it the best chance. And that's essentially what I would have done in the ski boot, and it makes a difference. Yeah. And so people can feel comfortable on it, and then I understand that they're fearful of doing it. But when we use our wedges, I use the wedges. I'll just reorganize that sentence. When I started working with people's feet, I was looking for something. What would I do if I was building an orthotic to help this foot? Well, I would put something there. That something would be wedge shaped. Can I find? I'm supposed to roll up a yoga mat and shove it under the area, but then teach them to move correctly on it. And I recognized that by having the foot wedged up, changed the timing of the movement, changed the stimulus into the tissue, changed the joint motion sequencing sufficiently for them to have a different experience when they walked away. Yeah. And so the wedges, we have these little wedges, basically just foam triangles that we use in a very specific way to help teach the foot and the bones of the foot to move differently. Yes. Stimulate the tissue, have the tissue respond, and the bones move, so that we can start to do that. Now, when I've worked with people with orthotics, I have never told anybody to come off them, because I don't believe in telling anybody everything. The same way I won't tell you to flex your neck, I'll give you an experience of that. Yeah. And so some people would have a session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions, and then put their shoes on and go, that doesn't feel right anymore. Some people have said, can you scan me in my orthotics? And then then you look at, with the orthotics, their body position is completely worse than without, because they'll make those decisions themselves. And I think that's what's most important, is that the person is able to, what I call, take ownership of their body. Yes. And that includes, what aids do I use to help me with it? What movements shall I use? But also understanding, actually, this movement is beneficial. This movement hurts. I won't use that. But taking ownership of our body rather than handing it over to us keen, willing and educated practitioners. Doesn't matter how good the practitioner is, if you don't take ownership of your body, you're putting a lot of pressure on that practitioner to help you. And so that's a big part of my idea, is to educate people to be able to help themselves, but also to educate people like yourself who can pass that knowledge on. And just so our listeners can sort of think about this, just because you present in that way today, we can, or the person, when they work at it, can change that. You can strengthen your foot, you can reshape your foot through specific exercises or types of movement, or loading the tissue. So it's not like we're stuck like that forever, because that's what a lot of people are led to believe. That is what we're led to believe. And a lot of people, I think the word biomechanics is slipping into the same category as pronation. Like, biomechanics is evil, like it doesn't work anymore. But I think that's because we've been doing it upside down and inside out. Biomechanics is all about the alignment of things, standing upright, stable core, upright spine, getting strong and packing it all in. And that isn't how we want it to be. Biomechanics is much more neurological, as you said, where we're creating an exploration of movement for people. And so if you are able to tap into the areas of your body that you struggle to move, and start in that soft, succinct, gentle but learned approach to putting movement back there, you can make a difference. I've seen people whose feet have been, I always remember one lady, I was at her house years ago, a little bit of input into her feet, and her arches literally popped back, and she couldn't believe it. I've seen people who haven't been able to move their toes for years come up, and they lift them up. And it happened to a chap called Larry on a course, and we lost him for 3 hours. He just walking around the room staring at his toes. It was unbelievable to him that he could lift them up. So we're just giving them permissions to access normal. But I should caveat this, because we always spray the good stuff around. I've had people who's have been in incredible pain from bunions. I've seen people with incredible pain from flat feet, and the flat foot has changed, but it's still a flatter foot. It's not like resorted to normal, but
Sure.
the change is enough for them not to be uncomfortable, and the change is more apparent higher up in the body or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And again, there's no control over this. I do not know what is going to happen to anybody that I work with.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
Yeah.
You are diligently following a program, which is there are these movements you should be able to achieve. Let's explore those. There are these areas of your feet that are asleep. We're going to wake those up, and we're going to let you to access those, and we're going to put the two together, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And I've said for years, see what happens as a very meaningful comment rather than a
absolutely,
because you actually don't know. You have no idea how a nervous system is going to respond. All you can do is put back the good. The intention is to help, and sometimes I think I've got this word in my head, is there may be a strong reason for your postural holding, which could be previous injury, previous behaviors of movement, previous working habits. And AT still the founder of osteopathy called insults to the body. So if we don't think of injuries and stuff, we just think of these insults, little things that have happened to us, have caused a kink here and an adjustment there and a change here. And we're looking to unwind those. So winding back in time through our movement history is also, for me anyway, a fascinating part of the process.
Yeah. And that's why I think you have to go slowly, right? You mentioned earlier going slow. Because if you're because if you're storing trauma or stress or whatever, old injuries even from a childhood, right? They can still be in there. You can't attack your body. You've got to go gentle with that. You can't.
And I think your body finds itself where it is because it's found a safe place. Even though it hurts today, it's still reluctant to go back to what it deems as an unsafe place. So if we can make people feel safe in unsafe spaces or have confidence where they previously lost it, because they broke a leg and they never put weight on that leg again. That we see that so many times. Of course, it's not the leg that they broke that's hurting anymore. It's the low back that is carrying the burden of being on the right leg all the time. And so giving them confidence, feeling safe again, permission to move things again, permission to put metatarsal heads on the ground. It's all these nice words: safety, permission, confidence. Experience. That if we can create that, the nervous system moves towards it and not away from it.
Yeah, amazing. So I've got one final question for you, because about eccentric muscle control or actions.
Right. Okay.
Largely because for a hypermobile body, and maybe for everyone, but typically we know that in hypermobility, eccentric muscle control is very, very difficult because we tend to fall into gravity and we let sort of our bodies hang. That's why a lot of people are attracted to yoga, because we kind of hang into those postures. We're not really working. We can get away with hanging into them, which isn't great. But in your book, you do talk about the importance of concentric, so the contraction, and the eccentric muscle contractions working together, or doing both. Mm-hmm. Why is it so important that we get that eccentric for our bodies? Because we would love to avoid it if we could, as a hypermobile.
So if you avoid the eccentric part of the muscle contraction, you are effectively breaking my number one rule, which is muscles lengthen before they contract.
There we go.
So
right.
If we change eccentric and concentric to lengthen eccentric and shorten concentric, then you are immediately limiting yourself to one side of the coin rather than the whole coin.
Okay.
I would say, and it's fair to say, I've got a paper somewhere that eccentric has as bad a rep as pronation.
Oh, really?
So I'm saying that pronation is important. I'm also saying that eccentric is important. And so you can see sometimes the wider community, how they might look in and go, this guy's just a bozo. But if muscles tear in a lengthened space, and so it's always in the eccentric action that a muscle tearing would take place. So we're already putting people on the back foot already with this conversation.
Yes.
But if you forget the muscles and you go for the joint movement, and the reason I would tear a muscle as it is lengthening is because the joint that it is attached to is doing more work than it should.
Yes.
Whereas if we can get the joints to team up and they all do the amount that they're supposed to, it will actually create an impossibility for a muscle to be too long. Yeah. So I get the optimum amount of lengthening. The optimum amount of lengthening as the muscle lengthens creates a response in the brain for the brain to say, well, that joint's gone far enough now. I'll send a message to the muscle to contract. So it contracts from its lengthened position and brings the joint back in the other direction. Yeah. Then that joint enters a state of what we call momentum as it swings forward, while the energy flips into the muscles on the other side of the joint to eccentrically lengthen and control that. And so, again, if we go back to a yoga class and we do our stretches, or if we do static stretching, one of my rants in the book was that static stretching doesn't work. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because classically, the one for me was always finish a PT session, lay someone on the back, stretch the hamstring. Hamstrings are short. Off they go for a week, they come back, stretch the hamstring, 3 sessions a week. After each one, stretch the hamstring. Like, Jesus, when is this hamstring stretch going to kick in? When is it actually going to be effective? And then you go, oh, well, the hamstring attaches to the pelvis, so pelvic movement's important. Hamstring attaches to the lower limb, the tibia and fibula. So lower limb movement's important. Lower limb attaches to the talus and the foot, so foot position is really important. Oh, hang on, we need to affect the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip, the pelvis, just to be able to speak to the hamstring. And there's 2 leg shapes that we can make. One is a pronating shape, you beautifully described earlier, pressures rolling inwards, knee bending, pelvis tilting. And there's an opposite leg shape called a supination leg, which is where the pressures move towards the outside and back, knee straightens, femur externally rotates, pelvis tilts back again. If we can, a bit similar to the cogs in the spine, if we can make this happen in all 3 dimensions, and we can get those 2 movements I described in the leg happening, you create a huge opportunity for yourself. And in that, they're the 2 things, that I have available for people to take ownership of their body are focused on those very 2 conversations that we've just had there. So
amazing.
I'm not saying it won't be frustrating and it won't be arduous and it won't be, because it is, like it is. But if we stop this idea of working on our body, stretch it, strengthen it, and work with our body and go, what does it need? What should it be able to do? What can it do? What am I not doing that it could do? And start tapping into those spaces. I think you have a really, again, good opportunity to enjoy it again. Absolutely. And a lot of people don't. I get asked a lot of times, have you ever been in pain? And then when I started all of this, it was horrendous. I lived in a world of pain. I skied, had big accidents, did all kinds of stupid stuff on a pair of skis, and sought practitioners to help me, fix me. Nobody could fix me, and I am the living breath of taking ownership of your own body, because I had to do that. I was out. And this really set me free. I had an opportunity, not only while I was trying to work it out, I'm exploring all of these sequences in my body, and magical things were happening. So if I could do it on my own, I think anyone could do it on my own. But now you have guidance, which I didn't have. So I got, stumbled kind of lucky. There's one thing I want to touch on, because I know you said that was the last question, but you said something earlier about ankles subluxing quite a lot. Yes. Yeah. And I just mentioned that in that eccentric space. Did you have a question related to that? Or?
No, I was just going to say, that's really, for our listeners, a lot of them will be listening thinking, my ankles sublux all the time. I can't even, walk to the end of my street without wearing an ankle brace, or my feet totally, ankle subluxing all the time. Okay. So working around the foot and how to improve that, it would be, amazing.
Yeah. Well, because I just mentioned there was that idea, which is what reminded me, but I was talking about you asking about the eccentric contraction, and
Yes.
I said the only way that that tissue can tear is if there's too much movement in that particular space that muscle has to manage.
Yes.
And the only reason you have too much movement somewhere is because there's not enough movement somewhere else. So you have this faulty exchange. And now if everything moves together beautifully as it should, they all move perfectly. Nothing moves too much, nothing moves too little, nothing moves too quick, nothing moves too slow. But as things imbalance, you have this happening. So you move, this is moving too quick, this is not moving fast enough, this isn't moving at all, this is moving too far left, this is going right to compensate. This is happening all the time in the body. And I think it's a nice way to round it all off. But I say I don't believe in the body having a dysfunction. I believe it is 100% functional all the time. I believe that you can't add anything to it or take anything away from it. You can just reduce its access. And so with these ankles, if your foot is unable to move, and also you've got this hypermobility going on, then you're less likely to be able to control movements as somebody who doesn't, if you've got the ehlers-danlos, etc. But in order to reduce the risk of that, if my 33 bones in my foot can't move, they're really not moving. And this is the irony of hypermobile, is that there are areas that are hypomobile.
Oh, absolutely.
So you have, this is a huge part of it, I think, where you've got, this is too much, and it's way too much, and this just draws your attention. Whoa, how you can do that? But the other areas of the foot that don't move, of course, they have very much less attention drawing.
That's right. Absolutely.
But of course, a significant factor. So if we've got 33 joints in the foot that don't move very well, you can start to see how suddenly the ankle, if it's got movement potential and laxity, that's got the potential to be the guy that takes the weak link in the chain. Or takes the hit. Exactly. That's put the phrase perfectly. And so wouldn't it be a decent opportunity to spend some time mobilizing the foot bones, getting the tissues of the foot to what we call wake up? And we use that wake up because it's speaking to the lay person. Most trained professionals know that nothing switches off and is ever asleep. But what I do say is that joint motion gives the muscle something to do. So if the less joint motion there is, the less response the muscle needs to give. So if there's no movement there, the brain may not even register it as being present. So if you're sat in a room now, the things around you that aren't moving, you will have dismissed those because they're not a threat to you anymore. The areas that move a lot, that's where all the focus is. That's why I keep moving my hand, so you remember I'm here.
Well, that's gosh.
So this compensation. This compensation is huge, and it's the movements of a lot that draw our attention, draw our focus. But of course, they may have to move a lot because of other areas that are moving a little. And so if we switch our attention to the areas that move a little, we may improve our chances of reducing the excess in those spaces.
Because basically you have to steal it, don't you? If you're not moving in one place, you'll steal it from another.
Borrow from Peter to pay Paul, I think is the phrase.
Wow, that's just amazing.
Paul's very rich and very unhappy.
Exactly, and in pain. He's in pain. Gosh, I think there's so many things in there that are just going to be so vital for our listeners. I know if you're listening, you're going to want to go back and listen to this again and just really absorb what Gary said about all those little bits, because we can put all that together. I think it was so exciting. I'm definitely going to go and listen to it all again, because I think the more you listen to it, it just makes so much sense. You know, even
unfortunately,
for us,
a lot of what I even when we teach, people say, I think I'm going slow, but they hear it quick and they need to listen to it again and again. So,
absolutely. And a lot of this obviously is totally new for our listeners. They won't have heard the foot spoken about in this way. So I highly encourage you to go back to the beginning and listen to it all again, because it's really, really valuable. It can literally, I see it all the time with my clients, this can change everything. So, it's amazing. Thank you.
Is it worth mentioning the programs, Jeannie?
Yes, I was going to say, how can people learn more about you? How can they find out more about what you do and your books and your programs?
What the Foot is the book title. It is aimed more at practitioners than it is the layperson, but I have been informed from a few lay people that they found it very beneficial. Our website is findingcentre.co.uk, which is CENTRE, the English way for any American audience. And the programs that I just mentioned, I put together Wake Your Body Up and Wake Your Feet Up, and it's an opportunity for anyone to experience pretty much everything we've talked about today. To self-assess your pelvic movement, your ribcage movement, and your skull movement, and then to self-assess your feet, and to start with your foot pressures to work out where they are, and then and all the movements you need to re-input the experience of the things that you find in the assessment process that you struggle to do, to begin to reorganize it, and then all of the movements integrated together to try and sync it all up. Now the two programs independently of £14.49 and £14.99, and will last you a lifetime, because your body movement is not going to change. So that was an important thing for me, to be able to make it accessible for people, rather than price them out of the market. So and then also through the Wake Your Feet Up program, you have access to the wedges as well, which is what we'll use, or you will use, to help influence your foot, the foot shapes, to put movement into a certain bone. Like, you can actually put movement into one particular bone if you want, or all of them, but just to give it a whole new experience of reorganizing itself on the ground, so that you can. And then, for your clients as well, they'll what happens is that they start to better understand what's going on with them, and are able to understand more about what you're doing in your sessions with them as well. So it's a very hopefully a very useful and helpful process.
Definitely. I've done both of those ones that are designed more for clients as opposed to therapists, and they're invaluable. So I highly recommend them. As Gary said, they're not expensive and easy to do at home. You don't need any special equipment, do you? It's just you listening to your body. So really
take your
good
time.
Really
take
good.
Your time. Be slow, gentle.
Exactly. Everything we talked about today.
Exactly. And for any practitioners, if they are looking to learn, obviously we don't travel around the world in the current climate, so we've started going online, and the mechanics of all of that we've talked about as well are available also on the website. Yeah,
and that's great as well. You've got so many courses on there, and you can attend the 6-day immersion courses virtually, because they're all recorded, aren't they? So I often sit and watch other immersion courses and just refresh myself. So if you didn't get a chance to attend the course, you can still do it virtually. So it's great.
Now, just to be clear, those courses are available only for people who've previously done the courses. So they'll probably be made available to people later, but we're starting at the beginning with foot and leg mechanics, then the upper body, then we'll put the two together, and then we'll start to teach about the gait cycle. So there'll be a series of programs to get people clued up in the basics before we can expose people to that. But for the people who've done more of the whole course and more, there's a support area, of course, where they get to learn more and more. But our intention at the moment is to reach out, teach the information to more people via online methods. People who haven't been able to afford to come to the courses, haven't been able to take time off from work to come to the courses, they're all able to access the courses now, and it's a very different environment, but very nourishing nonetheless to be able to teach in this way. Very good. Thank you, Gary. And you're very welcome. I enjoyed that. No, I enjoyed it. It was, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it as well. So that brings us to a close of our episode of Finding Your Range. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave us some comments in the box. Any questions, any of your experiences, we'd love to hear. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care.